Welcome to the Smart Weight Loss Coaching Podcast. I'm Dr. Lisa Oldson, a board-certified weight loss medicine specialist and certified life coach. In this podcast, I'll share fresh insights and effective techniques for incorporating mindset, habit change, and proven science into your life. Are you ready to achieve sustainable weight loss, wellness, and longevity? Then let's jump in and lose weight the smart way. Welcome back. In 2007, our child was born at 29 weeks, which is quite a bit shy of the 40 weeks in a normal pregnancy. It was unexpected, as you might imagine, and our little sweetheart spent the first few months in the neonatal intensive care unit. I would drive the 45 minutes to the hospital every morning to be with our baby, then race over to the office to work, then race back to the hospital again, and stay until I was starving, at which time I would go to the waiting room to eat a quick meal, guzzle some water, pump breast milk, and go back in until my husband took over in the evening. He would usually stay with our baby until midnight before driving home. We barely ate, we slept very little, and we were running on fumes for about 3 months. That's considered acute stress. It's like being chased by a lion. The brain responds to this kind of acute stress by changing our hormones to create less interest in food, to decrease appetite, and to mobilize our energy so it can be used to escape a predator, give a speech, or in our case, to pour our energy into taking care of our baby while still working and commuting. At some point between the 6-week and 3-month mark, we start to transition from acute stress to chronic stress. Stress is ubiquitous, and research tells us that women report higher average levels of stress than men. They're also more apt to report levels of stress in the 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 range than men. Psychologists note that women report finances, work, family responsibilities, and relationships as their major stressors. Health was also listed as a major stressor for women during the COVID pandemic. According to the American Psychological Association's 2023 Stress in America study, women were more likely than men to say that they could have used more support, which adds another component to their stress. Because women are often working unpaid jobs like taking care of their children, aging parents, and household duties, while also working a paying job, they often spend more time taking care of others than taking care of themselves, and they burn the candle at both ends. As for my stress, I'm incredibly grateful that my baby made it through those early months and is now a thriving 18-year-old. But what about women and men who continue to have intensely elevated levels of stress? Our bodies respond to prolonged stress with almost opposite hormonal responses than those that are activated during the acute or new stress. When the stress continues over time, the fuel that we burned up with the initial acute stress reaction has to be replaced. Our bodies are looking to replace the calories that were used up, and they achieve this via the actions of hormones and neurotransmitters. Those are chemicals that communicate messages inside the brain. For just a hot second, I'm going to give you a quick science overview of which hormones are released during chronic stress, but don't worry if this gets too sciencey. I'll get back to the way this impacts us in a moment. Under chronic stress, the hypothalamus, which is the weight control center of the brain, releases a hormone called corticotropin-releasing hormone. Please don't write that down. That hormone stimulates the pituitary gland, also in the brain, to release something called adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. Don't write that down either. Just hang in there with me and take a listen. That hormone, the ACTH, acts on the adrenal glands, which sit right on top of our kidneys, and there it stimulates the release of glucocorticoids like cortisol. Cortisol, which you may know as the stress hormone, is a fat storage hormone, a hunger hormone, and it triggers a cascade of effects that we're going to talk about next. One thing glucocorticoids like cortisol do specifically is to drive fat storage in our abdomen, called visceral adiposity. This is the dangerous kind of fat that can invade organs like our liver and even our heart. At a conference I recently attended, one of the speakers said that you can almost guess a person's stress level by how much weight they carry around their waistline. I don't know if that's been specifically studied, but it is true that in general, we deposit our weight centrally when we're under chronic stress. Our cortisol hormone behaves differently depending on our weight. Normally, cortisol will peak as stress peaks, and then it drops. In people who carry excess weight, cortisol is secreted for much longer, which frustratingly will cause more weight gain. This cycle where excess weight leads to longer release of cortisol, which leads to more excess weight, is one of the things that really drives me to talk about the science of weight. I know people often blame themselves when they gain weight, but that's taking a simplistic approach. And the blame game doesn't recognize all of the hormones and neurotransmitters involved in driving people with overweight or obesity to continue to gain more weight. For example, in a high stress, high cortisol state, we see that people are more responsive to food cues. This is seen to a greater extent in people who already carry excess weight. Think about it like this. It's hard enough for me to take a pass on a slice of pie on a regular Tuesday when I'm not stressed. Add some stress, and seeing that pie is more tempting. But the fact is, that same pie is way more visually stimulating to the brain of someone carrying excess weight, driving them to be more likely to eat the slice of pie, even if they'd prefer not to. Which I think we can all agree is entirely unfair, but that's the science. So stop blaming yourself and start offering yourself some compassion in these situations, because I'll say it again, excess weight is not your fault. Back to glucocorticoids like cortisol, which also stimulate the release of a hormone called leptin. Leptin is found in fat cells. Usually, leptin tells us when we've had enough to eat. But just like we can develop insulin resistance, we can develop leptin resistance. And that's what happens when we have too much of the stress hormone cortisol floating around in our bodies. We get both leptin resistance and insulin resistance. Usually, insulin alerts our brain when we don't need to eat anymore. Is this getting too sciencey for you? Maybe so. Okay, I'm not going to tell you all the neurotransmitters, neuropeptide Y, a goody-related peptide, that are specifically impacted. But I do want you to know that glucocorticoids impact our insulin and our leptin, and that drives us to have a preference for comfort foods. Let me say again so it doesn't get lost in all this talk about hormones and neurotransmitters. Chronic stress drives hormone changes that lead to an increase in cravings for rewarding foods, treat foods, especially foods high in fat and sugar. This happens at a biological level. In other words, when you've been chronically stressed and you want some cookies, you're actually doing something that's been shown to be instinctive. It happens in animals as well as humans. Here's how we know. Remember that first list of hormones I shared that are released in response to stress? Researchers put lab rats under stress to test what happens to their hormones. No surprise, their corticotropin hormones, ACTH, and the glucocorticoids all went up. But when these chronically stressed rats were fed fat and sugar, all of these stress hormone levels reduced. Feed stressed rats some Oreos and their stress response goes down. And sure enough, stressed out rats with access to comfort food gain weight, just like many of us do. We're not being undisciplined when we reach for what people call junk food or what scientists call Nova 4 food. We are acting in our best interest at the time to reduce our stress hormones at the level of the hypothalamus in the brain. If you're chronically stressed and you're eating hyperpalatable Nova 4 junk food, it's not your fault. That's your primitive brain looking for a way to lower your stress response. It makes sense then that stress is a powerful trigger for eating comfort foods. Before I tell you some fascinating new research about ghrelin, our hunger hormone, and its relationship to stress, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. Haha, just kidding. It's still me, Dr. Lisa Oldson, founder of Smart Weight Loss Coaching. If you're as focused on your health as you are on the scale, you're my person. In my online program, we'll help you establish healthy habits for weight loss, better health, and longevity. For those of you who have looked at our website before, you'll be excited to see that you no longer have to commit to a 3-month program to join us. If you'd like to learn more about our affordable monthly membership, head over to smartweightlosscoaching.com. And we're back. If you're a longtime listener, you've heard me talk about ghrelin before. It's what we like to call the hunger hormone. But recent research has suggested something new. Perhaps we should be thinking about ghrelin as a stress hormone. It's present when we have a low energy state, meaning we don't have food or we haven't eaten, which is in itself a stressful state. The body responds to the stress of not having eaten by releasing ghrelin from the top of the stomach, and that drives us to eat. Ghrelin also increases the release of cortisol, which you'll remember drives insulin and leptin resistance as well as weight gain. Ghrelin releases growth hormone at a time in life when we neither need nor want to be growing, at least not physically. In one fascinating study I read, ghrelin increased in response to both stress and food cues, but that increase was significantly amplified in overweight when compared to lean subjects. So if you're carrying extra weight already and you're faced with some hyperpalatable food and a lot of stress, your ghrelin level will go higher than it will in someone who is lean. You can see how that results in a vicious weight gain cycle. This is similar to what I mentioned earlier about visual food cues being more compelling for people who carry excess weight. They don't have a problem with willpower. They have a neurobiological response to their weight, which tends to drive it up further over time. I hope you're not feeling hopeless hearing all about the weight gain response to stress, because you know I wouldn't be here talking about it if the situation was hopeless. Knowing which hormones are involved in chronic stress-related weight gain means there is pharmaceutical research going on to target stress hormones like ghrelin and to interrupt these circuits. Our highly effective GLP-1 agonists and other medications can be game changers for people who have been unable to lose weight without meds. Please don't judge yourself or others if you're interested in medication for weight loss and maintenance of weight loss. This is appropriate treatment for the chronic disease of excess weight, and it may not be possible to lose weight in the face of high stress without medication. That's okay. Many chronic health conditions require medication, and for many people, this is one of them. Of course, there is so much we can do outside of weight loss medications to address the weight gain that often accompanies chronic stress. Talking with a therapist to get support can be incredibly helpful. Taking care of your mental health is a way to take care of others for those of you who always put yourselves last. In a future episode, I'll talk about more data on chronic stress and how we can mitigate it with exercise and with sleep. Mindfulness is also proving useful for better health outcomes, including weight. And the more research I read about eating a whole food plant-based diet, the more I personally practice leaning in that direction for all it can do to reduce the risk of chronic disease, to improve our neurological and mental health, to lower our cancer and diabetes risk, and to help us increase our health span. Okay, friends, it's that time. As you think about your NBA, your next best action for today, perhaps the most important thing to do if you're experiencing chronic stress is to reach out to someone, a therapist, your doctor, a friend, or a family member. It's okay to ask for help. And now you know why connecting with others to reduce your stress might also be helpful for your weight. Oh, one last thing, a quick announcement for any of you living in Illinois. I'm working with a new physician assistant who's certified by the Obesity Medicine Association and is available to prescribe weight loss medications to new patients living in Illinois. She has 23 years of experience in primary care and brings that vast experience to us. Please reach out to team@smartweightlosscoaching.com if you'd like to make an appointment before her calendar fills up. Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like more support during your smart weight loss journey, check out our group coaching program at smartweightlosscoaching.com. Until next time, stay well and stay smart.